We're speaking with Sadie Hunter, who is a candidate for Kamloops City Council in this upcoming election. Are there any social justice causes you're personally active in, or at least interested in?
So by social justice, what can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean?
The common ones around in today around homelessness, about addressing poverty, substance abuse, things that address kind of social issues.
Homelessness is an ongoing issue in Kamloops and a lot of communities, but I think we're headed in the right direction with some of the housing supports that have come online. And I think that we need to continue to advocate for more funding to support the agencies who are working on the ground. The other social issue that I'm advocating for a lot is accessibility. I think we need to do a better job of looking at our built environment in Kamloops to see where we can do better and make the community more accessible and inclusive for people who might have mobility challenges, because there are a lot of barriers that exist right now. So I'd like to promote that and also look at how we can maybe adapt transit to make it a little bit more friendly for those people.
Do you support a living wage for all working people?
Honestly, I can't comment on that specifically because I don't have enough data and facts. I'm data driven. My background is environmental scientist, so I would need to really sit down and take a hard look at the numbers and the experiences in some other municipalities and provinces before I could say definitively yes or no.
Do you have an opinion on what would be a fair minimum wage?
I think at least $15 an hour. I know many people who work in the service industry and tourism industry. It's really hard to make ends meet. Even just paying rent is more than 35% of your income, and that's not sustainable over time. So there's definitely room to look at raising the minimum wage. But in terms of living wage and how that would play out, I'm not sure on that comment. Yeah.
Food banks first appeared in Canada in the early 80s, and their usage has only increased since then. Why do you think that is?
There's a need. The cost of living is going up, and like we just talked about, the minimum wage hasn't really, I think, come online necessarily to support people with their increased cost of living. In addition to that, welfare rates and social service rates have not increased significantly enough in order to bridge that gap, because a single family, I don't know exactly what the rate is now, but it's less than $1,000 a month, and you're looking at feeding your kids, paying your bills, paying your rent, and there's just not enough money left over. So you have to make a decision, so that food banks are utilized more for that reason.
What do you think is council's role when faced with epidemics like the fentanyl crisis or the lack of affordable housing?
I think there's a couple of different things that council can do, and the biggest one is advocate at different levels of government. So that would be with the provincial and federal governments, and to figure out how to raise more money and raise the investment to help the city and municipality address those problems, maybe not directly, but to support the agencies who are on the ground working to address those problems. The other thing that I think the city's doing a good job at so far, and I would like to see more of, is the affordable housing fund that they've started. So they've been investing in that fund through the sale of land or some of the other costs that work with developers to build that fund up, so then they can put that towards affordable housing. And I think those are two really good initiatives, but I'd like to see more advocacy.
Okay. Beyond advocacy, what would you do on council to help eliminate homelessness?
Well, that's a really tough question. As one person, what can one person do aside from advocacy on council, right? Because it's one vote out of 9. So it would really be that advocacy piece at the provincial level, going to UBCM, going to Ottawa, or just having that voice and supporting other agencies. So if that's writing letters of support or recommendation so that they can apply for more funding, then that's definitely a strong position that the council can help with. It's a little bit limiting in terms of on the ground what we can do as councillors to try and address that problem, aside from facilitate where we can.
What do you think is a city councillor's job when faced with controversial development projects like Ajax?
Well, I mean, if it's not in the city boundaries, then it's a little bit of a challenge, right? Because the city can have a voice, but I think the biggest thing the city can do is to inform its citizens, provide information, promote their involvement and engagement in the government process that's there, in the environmental review process, because that's the information that's going to be looked at when the decision is made at those governmental levels. So the city's role in that is really just providing information.
What do you think is a reasonable income for a top earner in our society?
Well, that kind of depends. Do you mean by top earner?
Some folks have described it as a maximum income, or trying to bring in line the difference between a frontline worker who makes 25 grand at a substance abuse shelter, or a top paid athlete who makes $5 million a year.
Oh, that's a really, not
or a CEO who
question.
makes 20 million a year.
I mean, there's obviously a huge divide between like the haves and have-nots when you get to that big of a level, with athletes making over 5 million or CEOs bonuses being, a few $1 million. It's the equilibrium's not really on balance as to like what the final boundary should be. I don't know. Like, it should be enough that everyone can have a comfortable life and not have to worry about how they're going to pay for food, the necessities of life, food, shelter, being able to support their children and be able to retire without having to worry about how they're going to pay their bills upon retirement.
What are your thoughts on the current state of public transit and transportation infrastructure in Kamloops?
I am advocating for a subsidized bus pass program. The city of Calgary has had a lot of success with this, so it's really a sliding scale based on income. And what that would do is it would open doors for a lot of folks who are on a limited income, whether it's a pensioner or somebody on disability or on social services, whatever their income situation is. But if the bus pass is scaled to the income, then it just opens doors to access to different parts of the city, where that be jobs in other parts of town that are not necessarily where they live, or to medical appointments, or just to enjoy other parts of the city. It just creates more community, and I think that's an easy thing that we can take a look at.
What do you hope Kamloops will look like in 20 years?
I would like to see us as a thriving community that's inclusive, innovative, and inspired. So one of my main focuses is to really ask the question, what is our identity? What kind of community does Kamloops want to be 2 hills over the horizon when we look forward? Because I don't think that we have a good sense of that right now. So that is one area of focus that I'm really passionate about, and I think we need to start the conversation now so we know where we want to be in the future.
Okay. Once elected, what will be your top priority? Are there any burning issues you want to see resolved or addressed?
The top priority is the one I already mentioned, which is subsidized bus pass programs. And then the second one, kind of along lines of that, is looking at how we can address accessibility in our city. So there was an accessibility and inclusion plan and recommendations that were put forward in the spring, in May of this year, and I would like to see those recommendations implemented in the near term, and not kind of get lost in the shuffle. So that's definitely something that I'm going to bring forward as tangible outcomes in the next year or two.
Great, thank you. Good luck, Sadie.